The woman pretended to be a tourist and deliberately released a balloon. Then she used a remote control to manipulate the balloon to fly towards the palace. When the balloon reached above the ventilation duct, the woman immediately pressed the switch. The balloon exploded instantly, and the miniature controller it carried fell into the ventilation duct. With the operation of the controller, the operation of sneaking into the palace officially began. Then the two people who were disguised as officers walked in. However, to enter the interior of the palace, they needed to go through strict security checks. Looking at their unfamiliar faces, the on-duty guard immediately stopped them and asked the two to show their passes. The man took out his identification calmly, but when the guard scanned the identification, no personnel information was displayed on the computer. The anxious accomplice immediately looked down at his phone and found that the data hadn't been successfully uploaded yet. The miniature controller that had just fallen into the ventilation duct was actually a device capable of modifying information. Just as the two were in a panic, the data was finally uploaded. The accomplice quickly asked the guard to scan it again. Under the man's gaze, the guard had no choice but to do so. Soon, the man's information appeared, and the two managed to escape the situation luckily. Then the two came to the door of the basement, took out a password decryptor and inserted it into the access control. They quickly cracked the password easily. The two immediately pushed open the door, first clamping a signal jammer onto the surveillance camera to keep the captured images on the surveillance the same. Then they took out a miniature camera to observe the situation in the corridor. When they saw that the guard was answering a phone call, the accomplice used a directional microphone to emit the sound of water droplets. After hearing the sound, the guard immediately stood up to check. The two opened a curtain to cover the corridor and turned on the holographic projection, projecting the image of the corridor behind them onto the curtain. When the guard came back, the camera could capture the guard's gaze in real time. No matter how the guard moved, the image could be adjusted to a suitable viewing angle. Then the accomplice pressed the directional sensor again, and the guard had to go over to check once more, and the two took the opportunity to push the curtain towards the weapons room. With the adjustment of the real-time capture function of the camera, the returning guard still didn't find anything unusual. As the image on the curtain became more and more perfect, the man took out a password decryptor to open the door. When he opened the cabinet where the nuclear bomb launcher was stored, he found that there was actually an empty videotape inside. Realizing that something was wrong, the two immediately turned around and left with their teammates. As soon as they left the basement, a group of guards came to the corridor. Since the camera captured many eyes, the image on the curtain began to flicker. After they felt that something was wrong, they found that there was actually a curtain ahead. They immediately sounded the intrusion alarm. The man who came outside at that moment. It was then that he noticed the man carrying the case in front of him. He realized that the case contained none other than a nuclear launcher. But just as he was about to go after them, the ground suddenly shook, and then the palace exploded. The man quickly left the area.